Okie dokie. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, evening, good morning, all the evening eyes. That didn't make sense, but that's okay. So, wherever you are, whatever time of day it is, I'm so glad you're listening. It is early here, therefore, my words aren't working yet, but that's okay. Thank you so much for tuning in to Lounging with Leash. This is episode 4, and today we are talking about the badassery that is comedian and funny man, bachelor reviewer extraordinaire, charcuterie board reviewer, the board lord himself, Jared Freid. Now, before we get launched into this awesome human, as always, I start off with a review of what I am drinking my today's water out of. So this mug is actually really special. YouTube land, you can see this, but podcast, I'll describe it to you. So it's a very cute mug, and apparently I like getting mugs from people because I have quite a few mug gifts. But this one's super cute because this is from my girlfriend Cassie, and she is one of my best friends who lives in Southern California. We used to live very close together, and we hung out all the time. And she got me this super cute one that says, "Sisters forever, but never," or no, yeah, "Sisters forever, never apart, maybe in distance, but never at heart." So I just was like, oh, it's so cute. And there's like NorCal, SoCal little state map with hearts. So thank you, Cassie. I love you. I miss you. Really good idea. I don't know if you guys are like me, but like a mug is something that I won't get rid of if it's like a thoughtful gift, and you can't go wrong with a cute mug. So anyways, let's get started for the topic. So like I said, Jared Freid is a comedian, and as you all know, the purpose of Lounging with Leash is to start your day off with something not exciting, but more like uplifting and a little bit of lightness in the world that could be kind of heavy right now. And so I just thought I'd share about all the awesome people and cool things that I'm in love with. So why not start with Jared Freid, who actually was partially someone who inspired me to do this in the first place, because I'll start at the beginning. So I actually think I found him from a guest on another podcast, if I'm being honest. And that's why I kind of love the podcast world, is because you find someone you love or a group of people you love, and then they have guests on that, like, there's a high probability that you're going to love them too. So when people have guests on that I love, I usually go check them out. And he is just amazing. And his story, if you listen to the Hanson episode yesterday, episode 3, episode 2, sorry. They have similar stories in that they both started down a path, right, that you think you want to go down. Hanson's was signing with a major record label. His was life insurance sales, actually. And he lives in New York. He's a East Coasty guy. He was born and raised in Boston. And he just started down this path. He was like, moved to the city. And I'm assuming he was great at that job because he's just a great human. But I think what it came to be was that it wasn't necessarily something that he wanted to do long term, probably like too much of the grind, not feeling like he was following his life's purpose and his passions. And one day he just decided to quit and pursue this stand-up career. And he talks about doing open mics every single night, sometimes 2 a night. And like, New York is good for the comedy scene, so that's good. But he just like slaved away, like no joke, like every single day at these open mics. And I just really love his perspective about things, because Roxy's trying to wake up. I really love his perspective about things because he is someone who is really good at kind of just like having that positive attitude. And he talks about how sometimes like he would do a set where maybe it's a 20-minute set and maybe it didn't go completely well, but he got 1 new minute of content. or one new joke that really worked and clicked. And I just think that's an amazing perspective because, you know, in my head, I always think about how I just want to I want to kill the whole thing and it has to be amazing and everything. I want to get an A+ on stuff. And he really looks at things in like pieces. Like if I can get one new minute, that's considered a success, even if he bombs the rest of the time. And so he's been chipping away at it. I think he's been doing this podcast for close to 7 years. So if you want to go check him out, I highly recommend. It's the J Train podcast. He's also co-host of the U Up podcast, UUP, which is hosted by Betches, him and Jordana Abraham. She's also really awesome. And then he also has his own, he has a Patreon channel. And here's the thing with him is that he started doing all this online content as a way to build his brand and build exposure. And I guess in the comedy world, in the stand-up scene, I don't know if it's necessarily frowned upon, but it's definitely not something that is cool, considered to be cool. At least that's the perspective I've gotten from him. And I could be screwing this up, but from what I've gathered from what he said, that there's been a lot of comedians that not necessarily talk shit, but maybe just thought less of him because of what he was doing online with his Instagram and his podcast. So, but he's just been consistent, and he has this J Train podcast, which is pretty much dating advice, because he also grew up with a lot of women around him, and he tends to really understand the female perspective, but he offers the average male perspective is kind of how he describes the way he goes about answering questions. And so when Corona hit, and he had this following on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube, and was able to continue to produce online content and digital content, and he actually he didn't sit and flounder and say, what am I going to do? Woe is me, I can't do stand-up shows anymore. He decided, you know what? I'm going to do content every single day. I'm going to make my podcast, even though only 2 days are sponsored, because he has sponsors. He's like, you know what? I'm going to make 5 days a week content. And that to me was just genius, in the sense that it was more work for him, obviously. He's going through the pandemic as well. And he was like, I'm not going to sit around and wait for the world to open back up for me to continue what I love doing and to continue to build a fan base. And I personally loved that. I mentioned one of the episodes that is partially what helped keep me sane during the time where I was quarantining alone and I wanted to escape the thoughts that were in my head, or just hear another voice, for God's sake. So I would put him on while I'm making breakfast, and he talks about how he likes to yell at the screen when he does his Bachelor reviews, which are hilarious, by the way. And he's got this loud, raspy voice. He talks about how he's Jewish, Jew adjacent, where he knows about the culture but not a ton, and he's just very outspoken. He has a very good head on his shoulders. He encourages people to be honest, to put themselves out there, but also to when it's usually women writing in for his dating podcast, where he encourages them to really check in with themselves and how they're feeling, as opposed to, well, what's happening with the guy? Does this mean that? And does this text mean this? A lot of women, I think, tend to, myself included, really want to know what's happening in the male brain, but the way the questions are phrased and what comes up to him is really usually pretty interesting. It's well, do you even like this guy? Are you even interested in him? Or what are your feelings about it? And it's he could be a therapist, I swear. And so I think it's honestly amazing. If you listen to it, if you're in the dating world at all, give his podcast and You Up a listen, because modern dating is weird, and especially in Corona, it's even wilder. And so I think they have really good banter together. And so for his J Train podcast, he always has on, not always, a lot of the times he has on other comedians, so you get exposed to other people who could be touring at some point, and you can learn other kind of like stand-ups that you might enjoy. And whenever they get fully back, he also has a producer, Shelby, Classic Shelb, who's also a good follow, by the way, who is insane with his sounds. Like, if you listen back far enough, like pre-quarantine, he has the soundboard, or however he does it, I don't know, with like drops in sounds at like the perfect time, so quick, and he's so clever, and he doesn't talk much, but when he does, it's like really perfect timing. And they used to do celebrity lookalikes, when people would ask their question and then send in a picture of themselves, and they'd want a comparison to a celebrity. So different stuff like that, it makes you think like he's really thought through this whole idea of what he wants his show to be, the different segments, the different people involved, and it's definitely inspiring to know that like you can invent yourself. Like, just because he decided to do twice a week podcasts, once quarantine hit, he wasn't like, oh, well, I only can do it twice. He's like, no, I'm going to do it every day. And I'm going to start a TikTok. And I'm going to live stream, he calls it, live stream The Bachelor. And so when The Bachelor is on, which is probably should be my next episode, but he will like watch it and review it live time and on his Instagram stories. And it's so good because like when you're watching it on your own, you think a lot of the same thoughts as like fleeting things of like, you know, judging people or whatever, but he says them out loud and it's amazing. And a lot of things you're not thinking. And then lastly, to wrap up my ode to Jared Freid, just as a side note, I'm actually wearing what I wore when I saw him. That sounds kind of creepy, but he came through Sacramento. I was really excited. I got a group of girlfriends to come with me, and he killed it, by the way. Like, really great. Highly recommend. He's touring right now, so if you're on the East Coast, like, anyways, they're doing socially distanced shows, but really, really great. And I also stayed to get a photo after because I'm nerdy like that. So I'll put that in the post too. But I was just thinking about like, what should I wear? What would be cute? Well, this like bodysuit came to mind, and so yeah, so you'll see the similar photo. Although I don't know what happened to those pants I'm wearing. I should probably find those. These are not the pants, but anyways, yeah. So go check him out. He has amazing comedians on. Him and Jordan on the U Up podcast, the J Train podcast. Oh, and that's what I was gonna say. So Patreon. Lastly, Patreon is a subscription service where he can produce content, and for a monthly fee you can get access to special stuff. And him and one of my other favorite podcasters do it, and it's a way for them to monetize what they do, because obviously you can make money off a podcast through sponsors, but I'm pretty sure like unless you have a huge audience, there's not much you make off of that. And I'm sure he has a huge audience, but this is just another way to monetize that's not sponsorships. So you pay $5 a month and you get extra content. And his way of navigating the quarantine, daily content, really expanded his viewer base. He expanded his videos. He's been pushing YouTube, and then ratcheted it back to 2 days a week, and then he has more content on Patreon. So if you got obsessed with him over quarantine like me, you can subscribe to his Patreon and get the rest of the daily stuff. So just really smart, like entrepreneurial thinking. It makes you think about like how we can get creative in our own lives, whether you have a normal day job or if you have a side hustle, or if you're looking to expand. Like, he's a really good example of how one might be able to like build a career in a non-traditional way but still do what you love. So yeah, that's it. So I gotta go make breakfast, but thank you so much for listening. Comment wherever you might be. I would really love it if you could share it with someone who you think might like it. And yeah, that's it. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.